Let's dive right into it. Let's talk about the Louisiana Derby. $1 million on the line. A grade 2. 3-year-olds going 1 1/8. This was the field. You had 10 signed on in here. This was an interesting race. Ultimately, favoritism landed on Todd Pletcher's Noble Indy. Lightly raced, only making his 4th lifetime start. Blinkers were going on for the first time, trying to sharpen him up a little bit. And guess what? They did the trick, as we can see here from the results. Noble Indy gets the job done. He wins the Louisiana Derby, pays $7.40 on top. The number 8 Lone Sailor runs second, $7.80 to place. The number 9 My Boy Jack runs third, $3.20 to show. The $1 exacta comes back $37 even. The 50-cent trifecta, 289, comes back $95.35. And the 10-cent superfecta comes back $137.16. Noble Indy is 3 of 4 lifetime. He has never been out of the money. He has over $691,000 in career earnings, trained by Todd Pletcher, owned by Windstar Farm, LLC, and Rapoli Stable, bred by Windstar Farm, LLC, in the state of Kentucky. Ridden to victory by John Velasquez. The pedigree is at the bottom of the page. He is by Take Charge Indy out of a storm boot mare named Noble Maz. A 95 buyer speed figure, a 118 time form U.S. rating for Noble Indy winning this race. Let's talk a little bit about how the race itself was run. Noble Indy goes out there, presses the fast fraction set by the 140 to 1 shot stretch out sprinter, maiden anyway. All things considered, he was a little bit on the keen side. Timeform US has that half-mile split color-coded as red for fast. And you look at the fractions at face value, 22 and 4, 46 and 3, 11 and 2 for 3/4. I agree with that. I think it was a pretty legitimate pace, and I think he did a lot of running. Now, on the far turn, he's out there cruising. He's put away the cheap speed that stretched out. Now he's got to deal with Lone Sailor. Lone Sailor got a little bit of a shuffle from that speed horse that was faltering, but he comes with a serious, significant bid, looms up, actually takes the lead. And not by a little bit, by a pretty significant margin. He put a full length and change on Noble Indy. Now, immediately, that made me kind of perk up because I liked Lone Sailor in this race, but he was the wise guy horse. A lot of people did. The problem I had with that all of a sudden became, now you see My Boy Jack on the far outside, who we know what he's capable of. He has a nice, big, late kick. He has a big finish. Kent DeSormo took him all the way off the pace. He knew things were heating up in front of him, and you saw him like a flash come on in the far turn and way outside, 6-7 path, turning for home. He ultimately also passes Noble Indy. So now Noble Indy is third with 1/8 of a mile to go, and it looks like he's finishing up the track, and it's going to be a matter of those two horses, whether it's going to be Lone Sailor or it's going to be My Boy Jack. Ultimately, Noble Indy comes back on the inside and wins and prevails by a neck. My Boy Jack flattens out down the lane, and Lone Sailor, he tried, but he flattened out a little bit as well. I think the interesting thing to note, you hear John Velasquez after the race in the post-race interview talk about how he didn't see the horses to his outside, Noble Indy. But once he did, he re-engaged. And to back that up a little bit, I'm seeing a lot of people talk about how Lone Sailor hung and My Boy Jack, maybe he just moved a little bit too early or whatever the case may be. I think there's validity to what Velasquez is saying, that Noble Indy just didn't see those horses, because when you look at their final 1/8 of a mile, Noble Indy came home in 12 and 4, Lone Sailor came home in 13, and My Boy Jack came home in 12.95, so just shy of 13 seconds. So Noble Indy almost came home in 1/5 of a second faster than either one of those two horses, who theoretically, if you're just looking at the way the race was run, they're supposed to be finishing faster than Noble Indy is. I really think Noble Indy may have just kind of, I don't want to say pulled himself up, but he didn't know that those horses were there, and we've seen it in the past. Horses re-engage. Think of a number of years ago to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile with Shanghai Bobby out at Santa Anita. He basically threw it into neutral, and Rosie Napravnik was all over him. It took a horse to come up to him and re-engage for Shanghai Bobby to go on with it. Keep in mind, Noble Indy is very lightly raced. This is only his 4th lifetime start. He moved up from the buyer standpoint, but I think a lot of people are just going to look at it and say, well, this can't be that good because Lone Sailor didn't do what he was supposed to do when it looked like he was just going to go with a full head of steam. And My Boy Jack, okay, he had to come 15 wide, turning for home, and maybe that's why. I think there's more to Noble Indy than maybe it seems here. He earns 100 points. He's in the Kentucky Derby if all goes well, and it sounds like that's the plan for he as well as Lone Sailor. My Boy Jack, they're going to have to wait and see if he's going to get in. He's at 32 points. I think it'll be enough, but it's going to be very, very tight. And Keith DeSormo has said in a perfect world they don't run him again before the Kentucky Derby. I think it was a good effort from Noble Indy. I really do. I think this was a marked step forward. Maybe from a buyer standpoint, it was only a 4-point improvement, but I think there were a lot of things that happened here. You saw he was a little bit keen, Velasquez talked about how he was a little bit eager early on, and he just kind of had to get him to relax a little bit. I think there is certainly scope for improvement from Noble Indy. Is he going to win the Kentucky Derby? I don't know. We've got to wait and see what happens over the next 2 weeks, where you have all the giant, and I should say 3 weeks if you include the Arkansas Derby. We've got to wait and see what happens here, but I think this is certainly an encouraging performance from this horse. Lightly raced, looks like he continues to improve. The blinkers certainly helped. Pletcher talked about cutting the blinkers back a little bit, so maybe we're not dealing with what we had down in Louisiana once we get to Churchill Downs. I think there's a lot to like. He's very, very interesting. If he can press the pace and go on with it and finish, this is an interesting horse come the first Saturday in May. Lone Sailor, I think he ran very well. I do wonder if there is much more improvement there. I think this was kind of what you got. Mile and an eighth, I don't know if a mile and a quarter works for him. My boy Jack, I've slowly but surely, I mean, I said it early on as a 2-year-old, and I said it before this race when we talked about it in the stakes preview, which you can find over on video.drf.com. And if you're checking this out on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to the Daily Racing Forums channel. You get all of our videos, stakes previews, recaps, you name it. My boy Jack, I think, is going to be a turf horse down the line. And I think what you saw was that boom, that big turn of foot, that nice burst, but he just couldn't sustain it. I think all of a sudden that plays a heck of a lot better in a turf race where they're going 49 to the half and he's only 5 out of it as opposed to 15 out of it. And then you come with that big burst and you time it right, you get it done. He's a nice horse. He can run on dirt, certainly. I think he's better suited on the turf down the road. As for the rest of the field, Bravazzo, something seemed a little bit amiss going into the or around the far turn. I have to wait and see again. Take a look at DRF.com. You'll get all the sort of updates as well as live.drf.com from all of our reporters and our contributors about anything, the latest and greatest that comes out as far as Derby news is concerned. Snapper Sinclair, certainly a step backward. I think he, again, is better going shorter. All along, I felt like he might have been a one-turn mile kind of horse. And the rest of the field's kind of nondescript. I don't think there's a heck of a lot in there. The top 3, I think, are good. I think Noble Indy is, I don't know that I want to say I think he's the best of them all, because I think my boy Jack on turf could be the best when it's all said and done. But this was certainly a positive effort from Noble Indy. If you like this horse going into this race, you have to like him coming out of it. I think he did a lot of running. He gets the job done in the Louisiana Derby, a 95 Beyer speed figure and a 118 time form U.S. rating.